Welcome to NeverTheLess podcast with Bidemi Mark-Mordi, a show dedicated to organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. Today, you would learn how to discover your essence and live more powerfully.
Hello and welcome to NeverTheLess, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and this is the series where we look at truth. We're examining truth and we're trying to figure out what truth is. Where does truth come from? How do you describe truth? Last week, we looked at the duplicity of truth. How, because of what people face, what they've gone through, what they are going through, their feelings, their perceptions, men and women decide that there is a version of truth that is peculiarly theirs, that does not relate with other people. The problem with that mindset is that then it means that truth is no longer universal, and truth in its core is universal. This week, we're going to be looking at manufacturing truth and what happens when people take truth and begin to tweak truth, just so that it looks like how they feel, where they've been, what they've passed through, what they've experienced, and such like. In this episode, we will also look at what truth, when we allow it to be truth in our lives, what it brings out in us. Please remember to share, remember to like, follow me on social media, on all the platforms. The handle is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. That's my full names. And please share this episode with your friends and your relatives. I think you should actually make it a topical conversation. Get your friends to discuss it with you. Because if there's anything that the world struggles with and we are in dire need of, it is truth that is absolute. So what do I mean by manufacturing truth? Manufacturing truth is when men allow their circumstances or their experiences and such like determine for them how they see truth. So we have men and we have women for whom truth is become relative simply because of what they had faced. And what I have found looking at the Bible and looking at life and history is that this is not peculiar to one person. This is not something that only weak men have been found guilty of, and is not something that only strong men has been found to have fallen foul of. The capacity to manufacture truth is human. It's a good thing that truth is not human. Truth is divine. Because if truth were human, oh my God, only God knows how many people or how many versions and chapters and pages and scrolls of truth we would have. Thankfully, again, truth is absolute because truth is divine. So when I think about manufacturing truth, like I said, it is allowing our circumstances to curate what we believe. That's what it means to manufacture truth. To allow our circumstances curate what we feel and what we believe. So when you take a look at the Bible in the account of Elijah, and when he felt like he was the only one who had never bowed his knees to bow, and because of that, he felt like, the God movement was going extinct simply because he felt like nobody else in the land at that time believed in God and worshipped God in spirit and in truth. In that account, what you remember is that God told him that he was not the only one who was alive who had never bowed his knee to bow. And God actually told him that he had 7,000 men and women who had never bowed their knee to bow. The question is, how did Elijah arrive at the conclusion that he was the only one left who had never bowed his knee to bow? The reason why Elijah arrived at was because Elijah was going through a tough time. If you remember that account, he had just gone through a challenge with the prophets of Baal. And of course, he had come up tops because his thing was, let the God who is God cause fire to fall from heaven. And of course, it was on his altar, the altar that he raised, the fire fell and consumed the offering. And because of that, the 450 prophets of Baal, they were rounded up and they were slaughtered as it was meant to be at that time. Now, after this had happened and King Ahab got home and shared with his wife Jezebel what had happened, Jezebel did send a message to say to Elijah, I am coming for you. And in that space where he felt alone, and no one was there to encourage him or fight with him or fight for him, as the case may be, Elijah started to think that the reason why he was being pushed to the wall was because he was a lone voice in the wilderness. The point I'm trying to draw out is that it was Elijah's experience in the moment that colored his perception of what truth is. So he sat there and speaking out of his feelings, he manufactured a truth. And the thing about manufacturing truth is that when you manufacture truth, you tend to believe that it is the truth. So Elijah manufactured this truth, and in all intents and purposes, Elijah felt that that was the truth at the time. He was the only one who believed in God, and if God doesn't intervene, if his life was taken, then Israel would be without prophets and men who believed in God. How wrong Elijah was, but who was going to tell Elijah that he was wrong? The point is that when we allow our feelings to lead us, we manufacture truth that is inconvenient and that can be misleading, not just of us, but for many others who might be dependent on our capacity for truth to lead them where they need to go. Elijah, obviously, by God's response, was not the only prophet in Israel at the time. He was just the only prophet who was visible in that moment. The point that I'm trying to make is that it is because we do not consider others, or we do not consider the basics, or we do not consider every other option, that we usually arrive at a place where we manufacture truth. Now, to be able to rise above the manufacturing of truth, as we want to do because we live in our feelings, is to do ourselves the favor of rising in discipline to put our feelings under subjection. The Bible says that the spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophet. So if we're in control of our feelings, then the odds or the chances are less that we will manufacture truth. But really, there's a question that we must ask when we begin to feel that our expression of truth, or the way we see truth, or our perception of truth, is different from what truth ultimately is. I'm going to go on a break now. When I come back, I'll bring you to that question, and then we will look at other things that truth brings to us when we allow truth to remain in its place as divine, absolute, singular, objective, and immutable. Thank you so far for keeping the faith with me. This is the NeverTheLess show, and my name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi. I'll be back shortly.
In a world filled with many fears and discouragement, life often becomes a burden. For those who know the way, life is just simple. Do not worry, you're not alone on this life's journey, as Bidemi Mark-Mordi shares powerful insights and principles from her everyday work and life experiences in her book, NeverTheLess. NeverTheLess is a book designed to encourage and equip you to face life with courage, hope, and determination. Get a copy of NeverTheLess and other books written by Bidemi Mark-Mordi, like The Wisdom of the Seed, Honor, The Theology of Work, and so much more from a bookstore nearby, or call 080-905-63555, or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com to place your order. I guarantee you will make it. NeverTheLess.
Welcome back. It's still the NeverTheLess show, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and before we went on the break, we're looking at manufacturing truth. And I had highlighted the account of Elijah in the book of First Kings in the Bible, where he felt like because he was under attack, that he was the only prophet in the land who had not bowed his knee to Baal. We saw how God debunked that perception of truth, and God set him straight, because there were 7,000 other men and women who had not bowed their knees to Baal in that time. Before we went on the break, I said to us that there's a question that we must ask to help us determine whether we have crossed into the place where we are manufacturing truth, or whether we're still speaking the truth that is absolute. And you see, the reason why we must ask this question, let me give you a background, is because truth is about all that is around us. It is about perception. It is about learning. It is about imagination sometimes. It's about experience. It's about all the many things that make for our atmosphere and make for us. So sometimes, especially when our feelings lead us, when it comes to our definition of truth or our perception of truth, it is because we have allowed other things interfere with our lens and filter for how we see truth and how we see life. And when we find ourselves in this kinds of situation, we should ask ourselves one question. And the question is my present understanding of the situation the truth? Because truth is objective and not subjective. We must always bring ourselves back to the place of accountability. Ask yourself, is my understanding of the situation in the moment the truth? What that question does is it opens you up to give you the opportunity to consider other things before you draw a conclusion. Because truth is a conclusion that is supposed to seal everything. So before we get to the place where we draw conclusions and we make bold statements or express ourselves in ways that can impact the mindsets of others and lead others astray while leading us astray as well, always ask yourself, is my present understanding the truth? The way I have viewed it, the part of the conversation that I heard and what I had deduced out of it, is it the truth or is there something else? Is my perception of what someone has projected, is it the truth or is there something else? 80% of the time, this particular question can be resolved, or the answer to this question can be resolved when we engage others who are involved in that decision-making process with us. But there are sometimes that we choose not to engage, or the people that we ought to engage to find out these answers do not engage us. And so we can find ourselves in a place where, even though we've asked the question, it is not the right, we don't get the right answers. So one fail-proof way that I think that we can deal with answering this question is to ask it not of ourselves alone and of other people, but to genuinely, if you're a child of God, take it to God and ask God, is the way I'm feeling right now, is it about me? A while ago, someone suddenly did, change their attitude towards me. And for a long time, I felt like it had something to do with me. And I kept trying to reflect and determine for myself, by myself, what it was I did that brought us to what we now had in a relationship. After many attempts, I realized that no matter how hard I tried to go through this reflection, I couldn't put my hand or my finger to why this person had changed. But in that time, because they had changed, I found myself also changing towards them. And this was a relationship that mattered to me, and I didn't want to lose in the time. Eventually, I realized that I tried to engage them, they were not forthcoming. Eventually, I realized that I couldn't take the way I was feeling and the conclusions I was drawing concerning this matter. I couldn't take them to heart and take them as the truth. So I finally went to God and I said, Lord, did I do something? Please let me know, because I'm willing to fix whatever it is that I broke. And it was in that time that I realized that this person was going through something of their own that had nothing to do with me, and all the things they were projecting were not about me, it was about them. That taught me a vital lesson when it comes to relationships and truth. I learned that, just because you're in a relationship with someone and you know them to an extent does not mean that something cannot color how they see things and bring your relationship to the place where you begin to question what the truth of that relationship is. So I learned that lesson. And so when I'm at a place where I'm not clear what the true situation is or what the truth of the situation is, I do that thing of reflecting. And if I can't place my finger on what it is that has gone wrong, I ask those around me if they are willing to engage. And if I still don't come to an answer, I go to God. And God always, always, always opens our eyes to see what it is that has gone wrong. Now, why is truth important, and why should we never manufacture truth? It is because truth is the foundation upon which all things good and true happen. So why then do people find a need to manufacture truth? People find a need to manufacture truth because we do not like the fallibility that truth brings us to. Truth makes us vulnerable and presents us as people who are fallible. If you find yourself in a place where you are telling the truth all of the time, it checks your ego. It makes you just like every other person with weaknesses and with strengths. And most of us do not want to present as people who have weaknesses. So we'll manufacture truth to help us keep standing like we're the best thing that happened since fresh air. The problem with that stance is that it feeds our ego and it gives people a false idea of who we are, a false perception of who we are. And when eventually that is pulled out of us, we fall and we find ourselves on our faces because we had taken on a persona that is not the true representation of who we are, simply because we do not want people to know that we're not infallible. We do not want people to know that we're not all strong and have no weakness. Something else that truth does that most people do not like is that truth checks our ego. Because when I'm truthful with myself, I find it difficult to condemn everyone else. But when I'm not truthful with me, it's easier to condemn everybody because I have this false perception that I'm better than them. Truth checks our ego. And because of that, because people do not want their egos to be checked, it is easier and safer to manufacture truth. Another thing that truth does is that truth keeps us at the mercy of time. Truth keeps us at the mercy of time. Once it is the truth, it is at the mercy of time. When you think about the fact, for instance, that, okay, so someone finished school and wants to get a job, has this 10-year goal or 15-year goal or 20-year goal of when they get married, when they buy their first house, their first car, their first house, when they retire. When truth begins to manifest and they find themselves not being able to follow that calendar that they had set by themselves without recourse to the one who is truth, it puts them at the mercy of time. And a lot of us do not want to be at the mercy of time. We want to run as fast as we want to run. We want to arrive where we need to go as fast as we need to get there. We want to do things the way we think we should do them when we think we should do them. But truth keeps us at the mercy of time. So if the time that has been set by truth himself, that's the person of God, is 15 years, no matter what you do by yourself, in trying to curate and manufacture new truth, you'll find that you're at a standstill and that you're at the mercy of time. The point is that truth forces us to live in the present. You cannot overestimate your life when you walk with truth. You will know that there is a day where great things will happen to you, but that's just about it. Because truth does not give us the capacity to know the things that are the exclusive reserve of God. Truth keeps us at the mercy of time and forces us to live in the moment. So what you have and who you are in the moment is the greatest truth that you have. After today, you have no clue. In fact, in the next 5 minutes, you have no clue. It is the reason why what you have in the moment and is your truth in the moment is what you should take and run with and do the best that you can. The man at the pool of Bethesda was at the mercy of time. He was at the mercy of his vulnerability at that time. All he wanted was to be healed. But he had a limitation. The truth was, according to him, he couldn't get himself into the pool when the waters were stirred. So he stayed, I don't know whether he stayed at that point for 38 years or he had that ailment for 38 years. The Bible does not distinguish for us. But the truth is, the time that he finally submitted to his desire, which was before the truth, who is Jesus, was the time that he moved forward. When truth forces us to submit to time, it cures us of the tendency to disrespect other people's time. Because if truth, for instance, I live in Lagos, Nigeria, and sometimes traffic can be a challenge. If I need to go from one part of Lagos to another, and I really want to get there on time, determined by the day and time of my journey, truth determines, the truth about Lagos demands that I leave earlier than I should leave if I lived in another city where traffic isn't an issue. But if I choose to live in Lagos like I live in America, for instance, the truth would bring me to the place where I am compelled to respect others who live within the same truth that I live in. The point is that truth makes us acknowledge our limitedness. And this is the reason why a lot of people do not want to be found on the side of truth. Whether it is because you are limited or you have an ego, or you don't want people to know that you're vulnerable, or you want to force time to favor you, that you're manufacturing truth. Remember that truth is universal. And as long as whatever you've manufactured as truth does not work for everyone else, and is not because they have not applied themselves, but because it is not true in its core or essence, then manufacturing all the truth in this world will not change your circumstances. If anything, it will derail you from the path that the one that is truth himself, that is God, has set for you. As I come to the end of this episode, let me do a recap. I've told us that some people manufacture truth because of how they are feeling and because of the reality that they are faced with. It was why in the first episode I told us that facts and realities can be distorted either by our feelings or by perception. So when Elijah distorted or manufactured the truth based on what he was feeling, it took the God of heaven to redirect his feelings to say, you are not the only one on the face of the earth who has not bowed his knee to Baal. The point is that truth is powerful. I said it before and I'd like to say it again. Truth is potent. Our responsibility, that's my responsibility and your responsibility to truth, is to follow the flow of truth, not to try to change truth to work for us. Every time we try to change truth so that it benefits us and us alone, remember, others are being broken in the process, and that makes it an untruth, because one thing cannot be true and untrue at the same time. Truth is the one thing that does not have two sides of the coin. It is one thing and it is one thing alone. Next week when we come back, we'll be looking at what it takes to steward truth right. What it takes to steward truth right. If you have enjoyed this episode, and I believe you have, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and just let us continue to spread the word. Again, why am I doing this? Because truth has become something that is rare in our land. And what I want us to be able to do is bring ourselves to the place where we live for truth and for truth alone. Because truth at its highest level makes the world go round, if you understand what I mean. Till next week when I'll come your way, my name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and this has been the Nevertheless show. Remember, when you discover your purpose, you live a powerful life. I'll see you next week. God bless and keep you.
Thank you for listening to Nevertheless. For more information and resources, call 080-90563-555 or send an email to bidemi@bidemimarkmordi.com. Don't forget, discovering your purpose helps you live more powerfully.